In question 2, we have this. So it says, given the equation x squared minus 4x plus q is equal to 0, determine the numerical value of the discriminant if q is equal to 4. Right, so all you have to do is place 4 where you see q. And from there, we will get the a, the b, and the c value. So now the discriminant, that is delta, which is the triangle, is equal to b squared minus 4ac. Then all we have to do is to substitute the b, the a, and the c respectively into the formula. Do note that b is minus 4. So now we're going to substitute the a value and the c value. A is 1 because there's no number in front of x squared, and c is a positive 4. Plugged it into your calculator, you will get an answer of 0. So this means that the roots here will be equal, real, and rational. Now, going to 2.2, the question says determine the numerical values of p for which the equation x squared minus 4x plus p is equal to 0 will have non-real roots. 3 marks. So in other words, we will have to calculate the value of p, but using the discriminant method. All you will do here is substitute all of those values again into the discriminant. However, the c value will be p, so substitute p. So the b is still minus 4, and the a is 1, and the c is p. So negative 4 squared is 16, and 4 times 1 is 4, so we'll have negative 4p. We have to solve for p, so moving negative 4p over to the left hand side and dividing both sides by 4, we will get p is equal to 4. Now if p is equal to 4, this would mean that that whole question will still be equal, real, and rational. Do you agree? So this means if p is 4, let's go up and see what was q. Do you notice that q was 4? If you look at 211, do you notice that q is equal to 4? So common sense would be that p would be 4. There's no way, this was not necessary to work all of this out. But notice that we will get an answer of 4 because why? Q was 4. Do you see it? And 0 was what delta is. So how much must p be to get a negative answer under the square root sign? Now when we're talking about this delta, what are we talking about? Let's explore it further. Right, so under the square root sign, that is what is delta, b squared minus 4ac in the quadratic formula. Notice that is x is equal to. So if all under the square root sign is 0 and the square root of 0 is 0, this means there's only one answer, minus b over 2a. And if the answer is minus b over 2a, there's only one answer. And if it's one answer, it is equal. And any integer over any integer is real and rational. And so notice, you'll have x is equal to minus b over 2a. That means an integer over an integer. So this is why we get equal, because why? Under the square root sign, we have a 0. Then we have a fraction. A fraction means a ratio, and so it is rational, right? But notice that's if under the square root sign is 0. Now, for us to get a negative under the square root sign, this would make this whole thing be non-real. So notice the question said non-real roots. So for us to get a negative under the square root sign, this means that delta must be less than 0. And so therefore, p is more than 4. So if we take that 16 over to the other side, right? Looking here at this part here, looking here. If we take that 16 over to the other side, right? Now we're going to divide both sides by negative 4 to solve for p. Now when you divide by a negative with inequalities, what's going to happen? the sign is going to flip. So P is more than 4. Right? Let's prove it if P is more than 4. Looking here. Let's substitute 5. Right? If we substitute 5, 4 times 5 is 20. 16 minus 20 will give us a negative answer. We're going to be left off with a negative 4. So this means under the square root sign, we are now going to have a negative. And if we have a negative, it's non-real. So this means if the P value is anything slighter than 4,001, this will automatically push that minus that quadratic formula, minus b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. You won't get an answer. It'll, on your calculator, it'll say maths error. Because why? Under the square root sign, you have a value that is negative. So this is what we are trying to establish in these questions, which many children don't understand. So all we are doing, we're evaluating the condition under the square root sign, and this is why we are calling it b squared minus 4ac. b squared minus 4ac. So if it's more than 0, then obviously it's going to be real and irrational. Alright? Unless it's a perfect square, or it's going to be 0, right? Now, also, if it is less than, so if b squared minus 4ac, when you substitute your values and you get a negative here, this means it's going to be non-real. So notice I substituted 5, we got a negative, non-real. I do hope you understand. Read the textbook further for more explanation on this. Now in this question 2.1, it is saying determine the value of P in the denominator. That will give you an undefined. Now remember, if we get an answer of 0 in the denominator, it is undefined. Anything divided by 0 is undefined. Please punch this into your calculator now and you will see it says maths error. So for us to get an answer of 0 in the denominator, what can we do? Let the denominator equal to 0. So letting the whole denominator equal to 0, let's solve for P. So move P to the other side. So if P is exactly 3, 3 minus 3 is 0. You see it? 3 minus 3 is 0. Anything divided by 0 is undefined. 1 mark for that. Now the next question, 212, says non-real. Right? So non-real, we have to now look at the square root for non-real, because remember, once we get a negative under the square root sign, it will be non-real. So now 1 minus 7p must be less than 0. Okay, 1 minus 7p must be less than 0. But I'm just going to make you think a little bit. So this means 1 minus 1 is equal to 0. So notice here, if 7p is equal to exactly 1, you are going to get a 0, which means it'll be real and rational. So this means that p will have to be more than 1 over 7. Okay, it has to be more than 1 over 7 for me to get a negative answer here. So in my mind, 1 minus 1 is equal to 0. This means in effect that 7p is equal to 1, and then I will get an answer of 1 over 7. Think about it. It's logical, right? But let's just do it. So 1 minus 7p is less than 0, right? To get a negative under the square root. So moving 7p over to the other side, it'll become positive 7p. Then I have to divide both sides by 7. P is more than 1 over 7. Okay? And that's our answer. As simple as that. Do you understand how to reason this out? So if everything under the square root sign is negative, this means it has to be less than 0. Don't forget, this means less than 0. So all you have to do is take all of that under the square root sign, make it be less than 0, and solve for P. How simple is that? And that there, in effect, is 2 marks just for that. So the whole question is 3. So this question says determine the numerical value of t which will have real roots. So determine the value of t which will have real roots. So all you have to do is bring it into standard form. So multiply that 3 out first, 3 times x and 3 times 1. Move it around to bring it to the standard form. So bring that 3x plus 3 over to the right hand side. This will leave behind a 0. Okay, now it's in the standard form. Now remember that a quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c. So this means the a value is going to be 1, the b value is going to be minus 3, and the c value is going to be minus 3 plus t. We will then substitute these values into delta, right? So substituting, we know that b is minus 3, so it's minus 3 squared minus 4, a is 1, and the c is minus 3 plus t. Now looking at the chart, remember what it says in the chart. All of that must be more than or equal to 0 for it to have real roots. So remember, to have real roots, it can be equal to 0, but it must also be more than or equal to 0. So any number greater than 0 under the square root sign will result in real roots. So the question says have real roots. So more than or equal to 0. So 3 squared is 9, or minus 3 squared is 9, minus 4 times what's in the bracket. Now minus 4 times minus 3 is a positive 12. And then minus 4 times t is minus 4t. Simplify 9 and 12, we'll get 21. And moving minus 4t over to the right hand side, we will now get plus 4t. Dividing both sides by 4. T is less than or equal to 21 over 4. And we can write that in a way that seems more appropriate. So reading it from right to left, t is less than or equal to 21 over 4. And then all you have to do is write it correctly. Right, that's how easy that is. Well, that was question 2 completed. In the next video, question 3.